Greetings, Craddock here. Today we will be talking about a Bowazon, the Bowazon Starter build progression, going from 0 to hero, from 1 to about level 75 or 80. This guide will take you all the way through, and you can choose between one of two skills. You can use Multishot, or you can go with Strafe, and my particular focus will be on Strafe with this guide because that is my current preference. However, either can be used, and one of the cool things about this progression is that the early levels in particular can apply to any Amazon. So if you want to start, leveling 1 to 30 with this Amazon for whatever reason, you can do that pretty much because we're going to be using just explosive arrows pretty much. So yeah, anyways, get into that a little bit more. Very excited to bring this to you. Hope you enjoy. So between Multishot and Strafe, which one is the better ability? And this is hard to define because they're both better at different things, right? Multishot in my mind is great at what it does, which is AoE, area of effect. It attacks in a wide area in front of you. You can sort of control how wide the cone is by the distance your cursor is from the character, right? And yeah, overall, that's what it's good for. However, it has a lot of downsides. It expends a lot of mana because you're constantly casting it, right? And it's hard to leech that mana back if you're not hitting numerous targets. So if you're using this ability and you're only attacking a few targets, you may not leech enough to be able to sustain casting it. Second point is that it has, it shoots 1 arrow per volley, which drains your arrows a lot quicker, especially at these higher attack speeds than Strafe does. Because Strafe, you click once, it'll attack 10, 11, 12 times. And you still will have only spent 1 arrow. So in that sense, you have to pick up a lot more arrows. You have to manage your arrows a little bit closer. It can be more annoying to have to go to town more often to just get arrows. In that sense, it's not as cool. However, it has its niche, it's very good. And yeah, if you want to go with Multishot, feel free. However, I prefer Strafe. Strafe has a lot of benefits in that earlier in the leveling process, you're not going to be spending as much mana. You don't need to leech as much mana. It's just really nice to have that. Strafe can also has the nice trait that it locks onto enemies very far away on the screen. So even if you don't see them, it will still attack them, and you'll have that sort of safe buffer. It's similar to Frozen Orb in that sense. You just throw it out, and if it hits something, that's great. It will, clear the screen for you before you even get to the enemies. Also attacks both in front and behind you. So if you get flanked, you can attack enemies on both fronts while your mercenary goes on that third area to try and protect you if you're getting pounced on, for example. Strafe also has added damage on the skill, which can help its single target especially. Even if you only have 1 target with Strafe, it functions as both a multi-target ability and a single target ability, meaning you only have to put a few skill points into Strafe, whereas with Multishot, you might have to have some other skills such as Guided Arrow that you invest points into. So this is why I kind of like Strafe. Now, one big downside of Strafe is that it's locking you into your actions, which means when you engage Strafe and start shooting arrows at enemies, your character is locked in place, which can be a big negative for enemies that are charging to you very quickly. You won't be able to move. However, it can also be an efficiency thing where you're able to identify items and do things in between your Strafe casts to possibly improve, the efficiency of your gameplay. So it's, take it one way or the other. I like Strafe, and that's why we'll be focusing on Strafe in this guide. Something also about this guide is because the Bowazon in particular is an item-dependent build, meaning it's not skill-dependent. The power of the build increases more with items than it does with skill points. We will be focusing more on gearing the build later in season. So this assumes that this is your third character maybe, or your fourth character. You know, you've been through the game once or twice, you've had a chance to acquire the items here, or you have enough value to trade for them. Now I have put together options in the gearing progression where there are some points where it could be more expensive, or you could choose like a cheaper option. I've included that variation. However, for the most part, you'll need to acquire a lot of these items. As I was saying, I really enjoy the early levels here because you're not really using any ability, you're just using the normal bow attack, and it doesn't expend any mana. All it expends is arrows, and you get those, you know, they drop throughout the world. You can buy them from vendors. So that's the only thing you really need to take care of in this early leveling process. Now, early on, this build here is going to be with the Arctic set. As you see, the chest piece, the belt, the gloves, and the bow in particular deals a lot of damage, gives a lot of attack rating, enhanced damage for early on, cold damage, plus to life, cannot be frozen with the set. Really nice things indeed. Cold resistance, magic find, attack speed, life, all good stats to have. Speaking of stats, from level 1, we start with 25 dexterity, but more importantly, only 20 strength. And the strength requirement of the bow and the gloves, more in particular, is what we're going to pay attention to. Because even though the level requirement of the Arctic Binding set is fairly low, at least for these two pieces, there are other requirements that prevent you from wearing them until a certain level. So the first thing you're going to want to do stat-wise is just invest into strength. This will get you 5, will allow you to wear the Hussar's Iron Heel chain boots, which will let you run a lot faster, give you some fire resist, quite nice boots for early level. And then continue to put more points into strength until you are able to hit 45. Now something notable is that the 2-piece of the Arctic set still gives +5 to strength. So really you only need to put 20 points in, and then you will be able to wear the gauntlets. And you'll notice that once you wear the gauntlets, you will acquire the +10 to dexterity, which helps you equip the Arctic Horn, which has a very high dexterity requirement. So you may have to wait a few more levels after you invest 20 strength, and then you start putting points into dexterity, and then eventually you can equip the bow. I think level 9 was the earliest I was able to do this, and then you're rocking the full set at that point. Something to note is that level 11, you're going to tack on some life leech with the Cathans. Also, be sure you have an angelic set so that you can equip this at level 12, the amulet and the ring. Now, notably, we aren't really using mana, so the damage taken goes to mana. It doesn't really help here. However, the other stats, specifically plus to life, plus to dexterity, are going to be really helpful in allowing you to also equip the bow. I think earlier on, it's probably worth it so that you don't have to wear the set. So yeah, fix it up. So you're probably going to need to put 30 points instead of just 20 to be able to make sure that you're able to wear the Arctic set as early as possible, but I think that's worth it. For the cap, any helm will do. You can put, rubies in sockets if you want, something like that, or you can wear an infernal cranium if you happen to have one. It gives all resistance, quite nice to have early on, at least, in my opinion. Also look out for stamina charms, faster hit recovery charms, just to hit those breakpoints. Those early breakpoints are going to be quite nice to have as well. And you'll just play through the game just using your normal attack in this manner. You'll be using a mercenary early on from Act 1, so just get some cheap armors or rare armors that drop and try and find a socketable bow. Whether it's a 2-socket bow or a 3-socket bow, doesn't matter, just put some gems in it and let her go to town. Now, something to note is that you can alternate one of your rings with a Niggle ring if you want at this point, because it also gives attack rating, which the Angelic Halo set also does. So if you want to use a different amulet at this point, that is perfectly fine. And the Niggle ring gives a lot of magic damage reduction, so it's quite nice at these low levels anyway. Notably, before you even are able to equip the Arctic Horn, just make sure you yourself also have a socketable bow that you have put gems into that you can use to kill enemies with. Skill point allocation. You're just going to, from level 1, just start putting points into Critical Strike, go up to 6 points invested, and then you can put points into synergies as far as you can for Strafe that we'll get later on. And that's the gist of it. The reason we put points into Critical Strike is because it's the only thing that's really going to benefit us for this early leveling process. Having a little bit more physical damage is going to be nice indeed. So by level 15 or so, somewhere between 15 and 17, you'll be able to wear this build here. Level 15, you can equip the Aratha's crown and the amulet, which is going to give us a lot of all resistance. You see here, lightning, fire, poison. We already have the cold from the Arctic set. So those 3 resistances combined with the all resistance you can get from the amulet when you put the 2-piece on, in particular, is very nice. It also gives you a lot of defense early on, also very good, which will protect you from getting hit as often and also protect you from the elemental attacks quite nicely. So one other thing I really enjoy is the poison length reduction here. So it really negates the poison quite often. You're going to drop at this level. You can see you have enough attack rating from the other items here already. And in particular, because we are picking up an Act 2 mercenary, offensive, Act 2 Offensive Mercenary has what's called the Blessed Aim skill. That gives you attack rating based on the skill percentage. So this is going to increase your attack rating more than the Angelic set would. And in fact, it means that we do not need the Angelic set. We can actually drop that. And that's what we use to make room for the Arathas and the Niggle ring. The Niggle ring itself has attack rating too, so it's not such a bad pick. Like I was just saying at this point, it gives you MF as well. Great option. Cow King's boots are going to be a staple for the entire progression of this build. These are pivotal to the entire build. So if you're wondering if you can drop these, no, you need to have these. And yes, they are a little bit rarer because you can only get them from the Cow King himself. However, later in the ladder, they should be readily available, not cost that much at all. And look at all the stats. Look, they give faster run walk, plain fire damage. The defense is hit or miss, but the plain fire damage right there is going to come into play later on. And you'll see how great it can be in combination with the Ravenclaw bow. For now, though, you just notice a little bit of a fire damage increase, DPS-wise, but it's quite nice increase. When you combine it with the cold damage from the Arctic set as well, it gives you a lot of different elements, physical fire and cold. And then you have plus the dexterity here. It's going to help you hit your dexterity requirements for future bows earlier on, and also give you more attack rating, damage, as dexterity does for the Amazon class with physical bow attacks. The MF here is not to be underestimated earlier on as well. You can find some nice low items for this tune and other tunes. Yeah. If you don't have the Cow King hooves just yet, it would be fine if you stuck with Thesaurus, or maybe you have like a Transit Phathon, anything really with faster run walk, stamina, plus the stamina slower drain, things like this would be quite nice. Something notable is that you do have the option to wear the Aratha belt here. So you'll notice we're wearing the 4 piece right now. However, when you drop the Arctic Binding Belt, what are you losing? You're losing a lot of cold resist, you're losing Magic Find, but aside from that, you still have very good mods. You lose the Cannot Be Frozen, but you retain the life, the strength, everything that pretty much makes it a good set is still intact. And the Arathos Cord Belt, in turn, gives plus to dexterity. It gives plus 5 minimum damage, which will increase your physical damage. So you're losing a little bit of cold damage from the Arctic set bonus, but you're gaining the physical damage from the Arathos Cord. And what this gives you is a 20% faster run walk bonus. So you can choose between being able to run through the world a little bit faster or sticking with the Arctic Binding and go 4-piece Arctic versus 3-piece Aratha, 3-piece Arctic. Both of these work very similar. It's just what you prefer to have. Do you prefer to have the resistances and the Magic Find, or do you prefer to have the faster run walk? Now, notably, the Arathos Cord Heavy Belt also allows a few more potion slots. I think it's 12 versus 8, so that can come into consideration as well. The Act 2 Mercenary is actually very important. When you get to level 17, you can start to, or level 14, you can equip the Darkglow Ringmail on him. Earlier on in his leveling progression, the plus to resistances that this item gives is going to bump up his resistances as well. You'll notice he's not capped at this point in time, so that is where you're going to get the benefit earlier on. And then as he levels into like the mid-20s and early 30s, if you're still wearing this for whatever reason, the plus to maximum resistances will come and help him out more than the plus all resistance in normal, right? So it's a great chess piece all around and just a great one to have at this level. The helmet, once he reaches level 17, will be the Dust Deep. Again, increasing resistances early on, damage reduction, plus to maximum damage. These are all great things for him to have. And then Life Leech. So the Bluff Thief Brandstock is fairly easy to find, and it gives a lot of life steal, which is going to be important. It's not as damaging as some of the other options at this stage in the leveling process for a mercenary, but it's just very well-rounded. Just having the lifesteal and not having to worry about it is just very good. Aside from that, you're going to want to start fitting in a couple of large charms of strength. This is because you want to hit the level 55 strength requirement without adding any more strength in. And this will support wearing your crown. So very important that you get these strength charms in place, at least temporarily. You don't have to keep them there forever, but at this stage in the leveling process, that's what we want. Stamina charms, hit recovery charms as well. Just keep finding those or adding those in, and you should be good to go. So I've been talking a lot about the Arctic set just because it's such a good early starting set to use. However, it has a weakness, and that is that it doesn't have a lot of AoE. So you can use it to progress further in normal if you want. However, I actually found the Ravenclaw to be such a huge benefit for progressing in normal, particularly as you get later in Act 2 and starting Act 3, Act 4. It's just such a good item to have. Fires explosive arrows or bolts with your normal attack. You'll be doing this. So it's an attack that's similar to Exploding Arrow skill, except you don't have to expend mana to use it, which means you can just, shoot away and deal a ton of damage. And how we're doing this, the explosion damage is only so high because we have added fire damage, again, from the Cow King's hooves. You see if I take this off, the DPS is much less, and that's why I thought this bow was pretty worthless early on. However, if you scale the damage using charms, or even added fire damage from the Cow King's heavy boots, you can get quite a lot of fire DPS going. And yeah, so this is the premise of our attack here. The Ravenclaw itself also gives a little bit of bonus to attack rating, which is quite nice, considering we have to drop the set at this time, the Angelic set. We're still using the Aratha for resistances. We're also using the Death's Hand set for all resistance. Cannot be frozen. Increased attack speed. Poison length reduction. And lifesteal, adding in with our Cathin's lifesteal as well. If you have a rare ring with lifesteal, this would be a good point to use that as well. It's also an option. And then we're also going to be using the Nego ring, which I mentioned before, also has attack rating. So you combine the Mercenary with the Nego ring and all the other things that I just mentioned, and your attack rating isn't that bad for a starting item as well. So even though the focus is the exploding arrow AoE fire damage, you're still dealing decent physical damage to the primary targets which you're aiming at. So it's a great bow for going through normal. In addition, we're going to use the Twitch Throw studded leather chest piece, giving us hit recovery, attack speed, increased strength and dexterity. In fact, I believe this is something that's going to be of importance for replacing our charm setup for wearing the crown, if I'm not mistaken. You can take away one of the two charms, but you still need one of the other ones, because the bow set before, the Arctic set, gives +5 strength, and we're replacing that with something that also gives strength. However, it doesn't give enough to make up for both charms. So you still need to keep one large charm of strength in your inventory at least. That is notable. But yeah, this is just a super smooth setup. Quite enjoy the fact that you can just spam to your delight and not have to worry about mana. So there's just really no weakness of this setup in my mind. I loved leveling with it. So level 24, we have the option to take Strafe as a skill, because that's when it unlocks. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of good bows you can get at this time. So we'll run a Zephyr Runeward, which is decent physical DPS as compared to the Ravenclaw, which has almost no physical DPS, very little physical DPS. The Zephyr will have a little bit more, and we'll be able to attack fast, which is one of the good features of these two bows in particular, the Razor Bow base or the Edge Bow. These have very low requirements, and very quick bases as well. And then you also have the faster run walk, which will be very beneficial for mobility. And then it also gives, a little lightning damage, a little enhanced damage, attack rating. So just a nice, easy, cheap bow to make early on for your strafing. Notably, at level 18, Penetrate unlocks, so you can start pumping points into that as well. Get up to 7 at this level. And then you have, 1 point in Strafe, but that'll be enough to get started. Now I found the DPS from Strafe at this level is on par to that of your explosive arrow bolts from Ravenclaw. However, you have to work a lot harder to sustain it because the mana cost is so high in comparison to your mana pool. Remember, stats wise, we haven't invested anything into energy. We're still low level, so our mana pool is very low. My recommendation, therefore, is to just increase your maximum mana at this point by getting, 1 or 2, small, medium, or grand charms. They give plus to mana. This would be highly beneficial to just get that in a good level. And to balance out the build, we're using dual Multishot rings for mana steal mostly. And then you'll pop in an Eye of Etlich for the lifesteal, plus all skills, quite nice there. And then you're gonna take the Dust Deep that has been on your Mercenary for a couple levels now and just put that as your helmet, dropping the Aratha set. And this allows you to maintain your level of all resistance while still being able to get a good base physical damage. And, the damage reduced is also quite nice as well. So the helm that you replace on your Mercenary is going to be the Face of Horror. This gives a lot of plus strength, a lot of resistances. It causes monsters to flee, which at this point in the leveling progression, keeping your Mercenary alive is a good thing. So all around, this helm just fits the bill. It doesn't require level 20 though, so You know, that's why it's in the level 24 build. But the 20 plus strength in particular is going to be nice for later transitions, allowing you to use better weapons or armors earlier because of the plus strength. Single resistance charms are going to fit the build quite nicely as well, so start mixing in a few of those just to keep your resistances at a nominal level. And anyway, this will let you use Strafe, and for the most part, you'll have enough leech at this point to sustain Strafe. But like I said, the DPS is only on par. That's why we keep Ravenclaw on swap. So if we run out of mana, we're not able to leech, whatever the reason, you can always just swap to your alternate and then use your normal attack to get those exploding arrows back in line. And especially for like Izual or Diablo, the act bosses or harder to kill enemies, you will have to use the Ravenclaw bow to kill those targets because you just can't sustain the mana cost from Strafe otherwise. However, I think it's a nice transition into Strafe if you want to start Strafe this early. Then again, like I said, the DPS from the Ravenclaw is still really good, so if you want to stick with a build, this build all the way into the level 30s, you can totally do that. Moving right along, we have the level 28 to level 32 bracket. It's when you can start to equip the items in the build. We have the Skystrike Edgebow, going to be a staple, the best in slot in my opinion for this particular point of the build progression. Not because it has the most physical damage to support Strafe, but because it's the fastest. It's a very fast bow base, and it gets increased attack speed as a mod on the item itself. So it results in an item that just attacks very fast for this particular level of Strafe, and it's just a quite nice addition indeed. Also has higher physical damage and high lightning damage, so this is going to give you an off element as well, so that gives you some... You don't run into a lot of physical immunes, but you might run into physical resistant monsters at this time, and having that lightning damage there is quite nice for that purpose. +1 to skills, always good to boost your passives up as well. Notably, we are going to be keeping or placing the angelic amulet and ring set again, because again our attack rating is going to dip because we're going to switch into a different mercenary. As you move into Act 2 Nightmare, or as you get past Act 1 Nightmare, you can then hire a new mercenary, and this mercenary is really good because they give the Might aura. So instead of getting attack rating, we now get extra physical damage, which would be quite nice for Strafe indeed at this point. We also have the Rock Stopper, which is going to be a staple for many progressions to come. Hit recovery, all resistance from, well, not all resistance, cold, lightning, fire, and then damage reduced by. It's just a very good. Notably, it's very hard to get perfected rolls on the cold, lightning, and fire because they have a large range. However, getting a decent one is fairly easy. So that should be good. We are going to swap or keep one of our Monaltia rings so that we have mana leech. And yeah, just having the death set and the twitch throw to be supportive of our attack speed and our life leech is also quite nice. So all in all, a good build. This is also a good time to note that you can start shedding some of your resistance charms that you might have added earlier, just because you're able to mix in more resistances from the Rock Stopper and the other items, right? That you don't necessarily need for normal, and we're going to be leveling in normal going forward. You're going to be doing like baal runs and stuff. Cow runs are actually really good with this build to level from 30 to 40 or whatever. So yeah, for the follower, you're going to use Huainen's Justice Bill or an Insight. Both of these do really good damage. I think Insight has a slight edge, but you don't really need the mana regen on the Insight, so it's kind of like not required. The Huainen's just attacks faster than your Insight will, I believe. So it'll be better at killing those smaller enemies indeed. And the Skin of the Flayed One for Life Leech, just a great armor to have early on. Notably, you can use a Buriza Arbalest, which is a crossbow. It has a slower attack speed, but it has a lot of good other stats. It still has a lightning mod on it, higher physical damage, knockback. It has magic find as well, which can be appealing if you're okay with the slower attack. I wasn't, so I stuck with my Sky Strike. Just keep that in mind as you're going through. So at this point in the skill progression, even though you can get Pierce, we're only going to put 1 point into it, at least for the time being. When you get closer into level 40, we might be able to put a few more points in, but for now, we just want to focus on putting 2 extra points base into Critical Strike to get a little bit more damage there. Penetrate, go up to 13, just making sure our attack rating is at a nice level, and continue leveling your Strafe as often as possible. Now, stats-wise, we have placed a few more points into Dexterity. Notably, though, most of our Dexterity is still coming from items. So you have the Cow King's Boots, you have the Twitch Throw, the bonus from your Angelic set gives a lot of Dexterity also. So it's not just hard points that are giving us Dexterity. This allows us a lot of flexibility in placing most of our other points into Vitality, which will keep our life pool quite high and save us from dangerous monsters at this time, which is pretty neat, pretty neat. All right, and moving along to the level 42 to 46, depending on what weapon you're using, bracket. This is one of my favorite brackets for this particular build, because this is the point at which you've maxed your Strafe, you have a few extra points to dump into passives, and it just makes a lot of sense to go Harmony. So Harmony gives Vigor Aura, +2 to bow and crossbow skills, or whatever your bow base allows you, +1 to +3. You have adds fire damage, lightning damage, cold damage, which means those elemental resistant mobs, especially in Nightmare, as we're progressing through Nightmare until the end of Nightmare, are going to be handled very well. +6 to Valkyrie, when you don't have the skill points in Valkyrie yet, is going to be very nice indeed. This gives you an O skill of +3, and then your plus skills, which is +2 total. On top of that, gives you a total of a level 5 Valkyrie for free. Going to be quite nice. +2 mana after each kill is also good for this bow. Now, even though Harmony has a lot of things going for it, has a lot of mobility, damage, varied damage, free Valkyrie, it just doesn't have knockback, and it also it's missing a few things, notably Leech and Magic Find, and it doesn't have the fastest base in the world. It's pretty fast, but not as fast as some bows allow, right? So there are some weaknesses to this, but I feel like the mobility, the free Valkyrie, especially at this level, it just outweighs every other option that you can get at this point. Notably, you are placing the Harmony rune word in an Ashwood bow, Tira Salt Co. So it's fairly efficient cost-wise. Co rune is fairly easy to get at this point, or you should have one. Same goes for Smoke. So the Lumrun, Nephlum, you just place it in a 2-socket light armor of some type, and this will give you Smoke, which is what's going to allow you to transition from normal into Nightmare. You'll have +50 resistances as a mod on your chest piece, and this will let you fill that in. Notably, you're going to add back the resistance charms that you took out before. You may be able to add in a Grand Charm that gives plus to passive skills. That would be good at this point. Any small charms that you have that add to lightning damage would be quite nice to have at this time. You still need a couple of plus strength charms. So you have +5 here, and then the +3 that you get from other charms. So you need +8 to be able to allocate as much strength as we're going to want to place at this time in the build, right? But I feel like it's a good progression nevertheless. And the reason we need more strength is because we're going to want to shuffle our items again. We're going to want to use what's called the Lava Gout Battle Gauntlets. Requires 88 strength, but well worth it. Gives 20% increased attack speed, fire resist, fire damage. Remember how I was saying that the fire damage from the Cow Kings is quite nice? Well, added fire damage here, even though we're using Strafe now instead of an exploding arrow, is still very nice. It also gives a level 10 enchant on striking, and even though it's only 2%, this, because you're attacking so many enemies with Strafe, it will proc all the time and give you a free enchant. And what enchant does is it actually gives you fire damage and attack rating. So you see I'll apply enchant here, 101% bonus to attack rating, and a little bit of fire damage, 25 to 36, which actually makes sure that you have quite a lot of multi-element going, as well as physical damage. It's just such a good mix. Still using the Rock Stopper and the Eye of Eldritch. However, we're going to transition into using a Nagel Ring. Again, because of the attack rating, you need something to bridge the gap. We're going to drop the Angelic set again. And we're going to go to Gold Wrapped, because you need at least 30% to hit the breakpoint attack speed, and this is the only item with attack speed that you can, on the belt slot, that you can wear at this time. It's a nice piece too. It gives Magic Find, Gold Find. It's just a good piece to have at this time. And it lets you hit a nice breakpoint for Strafe. Fast attacking is key. For the Mercenary gearing is going to be very important as well. We have a couple of different things here. You're going to be transitioning into using a Duriel Shell, mostly because it gives plus strength, but also gives, nice affixes, plus life, resistances, cannot be frozen, just nice to have on the Mercenary at this point in time. This will allow you to wear your Guillaume's Face, Winged Helm, Set Helm. This gives your Mercenary faster hit recovery, but more importantly, Crushing Blow, Deadly Strike, and plus the strength, also quite nice. Even though we're not using the strength for our weapon quite yet, it's still nice to have. And then the weapon in particular is very cool. We're using a Hone Sundan Yari. This is a spear class, if I'm not mistaken. But it has 3 sockets in it, so it can actually get quite high attack speeds, and it comes with 45% Crushing Blow. So you put 2 Shales and an Am Rune in it, and you get 40% increased attack speed. The Life Leech is taken care of on the weapon, which is hugely beneficial. And then you get the Crushing Blow, plus the Crushing Blow from the Helm is just huge. This allows you to, once you outfit your Mercenary can basically kill Baal almost for you. Because you really can't kill bosses by yourself. So this is really the weapon that's going to let you kill bosses. And it's on your Mercenary. Notably, your Mercenary has been leveling at this point as well, so his Might Aura has increased a little bit. It gives you a more benefit. You're keeping the Cow King's boots just because they're so good. So at this point in time, you have a lot of a nice balance of power, mobility, off element. You have a lot of Magic Find, a decent amount of Gold Find. It's just a great build, in my opinion. Now, even that being said, there is an alternate setup at this time that, while I haven't tested it, it looks very good. And in particular, the Goldstrike Arch as a weapon is just highly suited for this build, because it also comes with a lot of attack speed in the mods for damage to demons, damage to undead. Just even though it doesn't have as much of a focus on off element, it enhances the physical element very well. So even though you can see the damage per second is a lot lower from this weapon, those 2 mods, the 150 or the 100 to 200% damage to demons, damage to undead, that's what's going to make up for not having the other Notably, this weapon has a wide range for enhanced damage. I mean, Harmony has a similar range. I think Harmony is 200 to 275, so it's 200 to 250 here. The attack rating is a wide range, 100 to 200 on the damage to demons, so it's very hard to get a well-rolled Goldstrike Arch. Even still, nice cheap weapon, typically, to get in later in the ladder. Stats and skills. Let's just take a quick look. So you have 60 invested at this point, noting the +8 to strength that you need. Dexterity has gone up a little bit as well. And as you're leveling, so this is as you're leveling from 30 to 42, you're going to want to start investing some of that into dexterity, a little bit more into strength, and then, you know, hold back on putting points into vitality until you're absolutely sure that you met the requirements that you need for this phase of the progression, right? And you'll put a few more points into Pierce at this time, and you'll just max out Strafe. So this is a good balance in my mind to start running Nightmare Baal and getting experience from those runs in Nightmare. So you're doing pretty good on Nightmare, but you want to do a little bit better. Be more efficient in your runs. For example, get upgraded gear. Now that you're slightly higher level, you're getting closer into 60, 63, you know, this sort of level. You can equip better gear. Now, at this point, you can opt for higher cost, higher benefit, or you can go for the cheaper end of things. There are a lot of builds, though, you can opt for. So I wanted to list those all, just list the variations, and you can choose from each of them. Cheapest of the options, which is the one I tested, which actually works quite well, is the Harmony+Smoke combination. So still using the smoke. However, you might upgrade the base of the rune word to something that would give you a little bit more defense. In particular, because we're going to have even more strength allocation. You're going to have at least 95 strength allocated. So note, we haven't invested any more points into strength because we haven't needed to, which is pretty cool trick of the leveling progression here, is that we're actually going to equip items in the build that give us plus strength. So you'll see here, the Nosferatus gives plus 15 strength. The War Travelers gives plus 10 strength, for example. All of that is good. Now, there's a lot going on in this build, particularly with the Harmony. It's not the same bow. It looks like it's the same bow, but it's not. We have the option here to go matriarchal, which is the upgraded version. Remember, we were using the Ashwood bow before, which is an exceptional. This is the elite base, matriarchal. However, that's the cheaper option. You can also go for a Grand Matron bow, which is a slower attacking base, but heavier hitting. The thing about this particular gearing setup is we have enough attack speed so that both builds attack pretty much at the same breakpoint. So in that sense, the matriarchal bow is wasting 10% attack speed. However, I feel like the Nosferatus has several benefits. You know, the plus strength is great. The life steal, slowest target, plus mana after each kill is just very nice. It's just the best belt, regardless of if you're using the attack speed or not. So regardless of what base you opt for, it will be a good setup. Now, I like that this opens your options because a lot of the time it can be hard to get a Grand Matron bow base that is high, you know, plus the skills. So some going for like a +2 matriarchal with 4 sockets might be a little bit easier to acquire. And at this point, you might have enough money even still to re-roll your Harmony. So say you roll it once and you get a low enhanced damage percentage. Maybe you take the time and the runes to clear it out with a Hell Rune and a Scroll of Town Portal and try it again to get a higher enhanced damage amount. For example, Notably, the plus Valkyrie you won't be using as much anymore because at this point in the progression, you have enough points to put your own into Valkyrie. So you'll have to get the prerequisites, which means you get the evade, avoid, and dodge along with it. Some people like that, some people hate it, but I think it's worth it at this point to start leveling your Valkyrie. Now that you've maxed out your Strafe and your Penetrate, you put a few more points into Critical Strike, and you've leveled up your Pierce to what I consider a decent level. 8 hard points is pretty good. That you can, start leveling the Valkyrie. Now you're probably wondering what's going on with the lightning bolt here. This is actually a great method for off-element damage, because even though we have pretty high off-element with the Harmony even still, relative to our physical damage, it's lower than it was before, right? So this time you might want to start thinking about getting an offhand Titan's Revenge. Like a cheap one is fine, just a normal Titan's Revenge, doesn't matter how good it is. And a Tiamat's Rebuke, just to get some more off-element damage. And what's going on here is when you use Lightning Bolt, it magically converts your physical damage into elemental damage. So it's converting 100% of the physical into lightning damage. So when you come up against physical immune monsters, this will allow you, especially for elite monsters that are hard to kill, just kill them off really quickly. Aside from that, you shouldn't run into a lot of physical immunes. It's just nice to have something that also gives you mobility on the offhand and allow you, for such a cheap investment. It's 1 point that you have to put into Lightning Bolt, and it's prerequisite Poison Javelin, and you have a nice off-element. The War Travelers, they're not required because I tested my build progression. I kept the Cow King's boots, and the fire that you get from the Cow King's boots happens to be pretty darn good. However, the additive damage that you get from the War Travelers does trump, Gore Riders, I think. All the other boots pretty much, and it also has Magic Find, Strength, all the other good affixes, Run Walk. So this is the best boot. They are a little bit more expensive. If you can get them, that's cool. But like I said, you can keep the Cow Kings and still do fine. So just notable. We have the Lang of Hands, also increasing our damage to demons significantly. You'll notice on the Baal waves, waves 4 and 5 in particular, they just melt because of this affix here. We're going to use the increased attack speed here, and plus fire res means you don't really need to equip a lot of fire res otherwise. Kind of nice. Cat's Eye Amulet, another source of attack speed. Also faster run walk, so you've got the Vigor aura, you've got the faster run walk here, you got the faster run walk from your boots. It's just a very quick moving setup. And so even though you don't have teleport, you move around a lot. It's also a nice source of dexterity, this amulet is, that is. So it means you don't have to place as much dexterity to hit the requirement for the matriarchal or the Grand Matron bow. Even though having more dexterity is still nice because it gives damage and attack rating, right? Considering attack rating, we do have attack rating from other sources at this point. So you might have some charms that give attack rating, for example, in the mix at this point. You definitely are going to be wearing a Raven Frost, which gives 250 attack rating, help you hit enemies. The cold damage from either a charm or the Raven Frost slows enemies. I forgot to mention that. Plus the dexterity, another source of dexterity, plus the mana, remembering that even at this level, our mana pool is still pretty low. Plus the mana from the Raven Frost is quite nice. Cold Absorb, always welcome, means that if you don't have cold resistance, it's not as big of a deal because you have the Cold Absorb. And then the Cannot Be Frozen, huge deal to keep you from getting slowed down and not being able to move or attack as quickly. Stone Coil ring here that I have, it's a rare ring. It gives +2 attack rating, mana steal, and poison resistance, and +1 mana after each kill. The bare bones ring would just be mana steal and attack rating, Those are the only two required affixes, I think. Though the poison resistance is nice, it means you don't have to have as much poison resistance from charms. Notably, on charms, you want to start filling in with some arcing charms that give plus to lightning damage, maybe some plus small charms, plus maximum damage small charms, grand charms if you can fit those in, right? And it's just a well-rounded setup. Something you'll look at is you'll notice that I have more damage charms in this particular build, whereas if you look at another setup that we have here is the Harmony. So we have Harmony+Smoke. We also have Harmony+Duress. The Duress is also a very good armor you can use instead of the Smoke, which gives a lot of resistances. Duress gives even more hit recovery, which allows you to hit a higher breakpoint if you add on a little bit more from charms. But also gives enhanced physical damage, cold damage range, crushing blow, open wounds, and a slew of resistances. Now the resistances that you get here are not going to be as high as what you would get from a smoke, so this is the trade-off. You have to make up for not having as much resistances via charms for this particular build. So you'll notice I have more resistance charms here than I have with the other build. Whereas the other build, I trade off, I'm able to get more plus damage from my charms. And in the end, the DPS of both will sort of equal out to where you're not that far off. Duress does give a benefit, obviously, from having like crushing blow and enhanced damage, but it's not that much of a benefit that I would worry about it. So if you have the resources at this time in the ladder, you can go for the Umrune, Shale Thul, and make the Duress and the Grand Matron Bow and go all out, right? But if you don't and you want to go a little bit cheaper, this is where using the smoke setup with just, equipping some damage charms will be a little bit nicer indeed. Notably, the Nosferitus isn't required, like I was saying before, for the Matriarchal. So if you want to switch that out for String of Ears, that also has life leech and damage reduction, that is possible here. But like I said, the plus strength, the mana after each kill is quite nice. I think that's the better setup. Your mercenary at this point in time is going to evolve. You're going to want to search out a treachery, Shale Thul Lem, to place on your mercenary. Ethereal armor preferred, but not required. This is going to get your mercenary a lot of attack speed. Fade is very beneficial. Gives your mercenary all resistance. Reduces the duration of curses and poisons on them, which is quite nice as well. And the helm, you can transition at level 66 into a Taurash's, which would be give you a lot of lifesteal plus the life, all resistance. Very nice for this setup. And an obedience, so look out for or trade for an elite polearm that has 5 sockets. These aren't typically as expensive as the 4-socket variants, and it doesn't need to be ethereal at this point in time. You're just looking for a 5-socket polearm that has lower requirements, so you can put a Helco Thul Ethal, which are very cheap runes, by the way, and make this very powerful, very efficient rune word. One of the cool things about this rune word is that it gives not only hit recovery for your mercenary, but it also gives an enchant, which remember give fire damage and attack rating for your mercenary. Also has crushing blow on it, 40%, all resistances. It's just a great weapon to have at this point in the progression. The reason that you don't want a Buriza, and you may look at a Buriza and say, oh my goodness, the Buriza, it gives 100% piercing attack, gives a lot of cold damage, plus the maximum damage based on your skill level, which is probably one of the best things about it, by the way. However, the high base damage of this weapon does not make up for the fact that it attacks very slowly. You can see here, 4.8 attacks per second compared to the Harmony or the Goldstrike, which attacked 6.5, almost 6.25, attacks per second. So Buriza in comparison is very slow. It will save you a lot of skill points, but the thing about this point in the leveling progression is you already have extra skill points to place in passives or, wherever you want, basically. I'm choosing to level the Valkyrie, but you could easily just as level, guided arrow or whatever you want, right? So in my opinion, the Buriza definitely has the DPS, and it's nice because you don't have to put as many points into Pierce. However, it just doesn't attack as quickly. And I wanted to put together this profile just to show you that this is not as efficient. So another great option here is going with the Witchwild string. This drops as a short siege bow, but you will upgrade it via the cube recipe to a diamond bow. It's a pretty fast attacking base, but what puts it over the edge are the 2 sockets that you can work with. This allows you to put up to 2 shale runes in it. We'll only need 1, thankfully, because the best allocation in my mind would to be continue using the Cat's Eye and the Laying of Hands gloves. However, even with only using 1 shale in the Witchwild string, this will put you over the breakpoint required for the fastest. At least attacks on this chart. We're not going to go over the top for any other breakpoints. But what this bow offers is fast attacks, a lot of versatility with the second socket. The chance to amplify damage on striking is going to come in very handy, even though it's a very low chance. Remember, we're already attacking very fast with our Strafe, especially against a single target, such as Baal. If you're doing Nightmare Baal running, this will be very helpful in proccing that on the boss, taking the boss down quicker. It gives a lot of deadly strike, so even though the the damage output of the bow itself is fairly low, it makes up for it in high crit amounts. And notably, the deadly strike is a separate crit affix from your critical strike skill. This means they don't stack, they're separate chances. So they're both still beneficial, not diminishing one over the other. That being said, if you get too much of both, I could see some lesser returns on the upper end of investment. So maybe keep from putting into more critical strike. I still like the current level that we have right there for crit strike in the skill tree, however. One other thing that's really nice about the Witchwild string is it gives all resistances plus 40, which means you can make more room in your charms for just plus maximum damage charms, lightning damage charms, which can be a little bit more expensive. So the upgrade of the bow is expensive, the charms are expensive. If you're going to opt for this setup, you're going to run a Razortail Sharkskin belt, also expensive. A Duress, also expensive. We've previously mentioned how good this can be for physical DPS, however. And yeah, just the all resistance allows you to fit in all these things without having to worry so much. All things said, I quite like this for the Pierce. You get 100% Pierce once you hit level 9 there. You still have Mana Stolen per hit ring, and then you put an An rune in the Witchwild string for lifesteal. Alternate setup, instead of the Razortail, so you drop the 100% Pierce, but you run the Mavina's Tenet, which is a cheaper option, very cheap belt. Gives mana steal and faster run walk, so you're losing some of the run speed by dropping a Harmony, obviously. But since we're keeping the Cat's Eye, it's still a little bit faster. But if you want to get closer to where a Harmony would be, you could wear the Mavina's Tenet and then swap your ring from Mana Steal to Lifesteal ring instead. And then that would also allow you to run, instead of an Am rune, a Neph rune, so you could get the knockback in this setup. That's also a very good combination in my mind. Would keep enemies away from you, keep you from getting attacked. So even though you don't have the 100% Pierce, you have the extra faster run walk, the knockback. It's just a good setup. Either way. It is a little bit lower DPS, notably because the Shark Skin Belt, the Razor Tail, also gives plus to maximum damage, so just something to take a note of. Either way is going to be really great. Just pick and choose which way you want, right? And remember the Goldstrike that we had earlier on? You can actually continue using it at level 70 plus by transmuting it in the cube, upgrading it from its base, which is a Gothic bow, to a Hydra bow. And this is very expensive. It requires a lot of runes from what I remember. Upgrade an exceptional unique weapon to the elite base. Lum rune, pull rune. So that's very expensive in my mind. So it's up to you whether you want to use that recipe to upgrade your Goldstrike Arch. The other thing, as I mentioned before, you probably want at least a decent roll on your enhanced damage and your damage to demons, undead, and attack rating before you upgrade the bow. So if you have a crappy Goldstrike Arch, you might want to trade for one that's better so that it's a better candidate for upgrading if you're going to go this route. Now, what's the benefit of going a Goldstrike Arch over a Harmony at this point in the leveling progression? I will say the Goldstrike Arch has higher physical damage, so plus the damage to demons and undead is better. And now that we're transitioned to a pure setup where you have an off-element attack via the Titan's Revenge and the lightning attack, right, from the lightning bolt, you don't need to worry about, you're not as dependent on having those cold damage, lightning damage, and fire damage that the Harmony gives you, right? We're not really using the Valkyrie as much, the free Valkyrie. We're not using that as much anymore, so we're not dependent on that either. So as you can see, there's a lot of reason from a DPS standpoint to go for this option. What are the downsides? It's more costly, firstly. You lose the Vigor, which is probably the biggest thing. So we're losing the Vigor aura. Not only that, we're probably losing out on the Cat's Eye as well, because Cat's Eye, one of the benefits of the Goldstrike Arch is it comes with a lot of increased attack speed. And one of the best ways to benefit from this is to drop either the glove or the amulet. So you can trade out your Cat's Eye for an Atmas, which will give a lot of poison resist, also give you a chance to amplify damage on striking. This would allow you to DPS down bosses even quicker. So if you're, for example, if you're farming Baal, this might be a great option for allowing you to kill him or his minions a little bit quicker. But you could also opt for, keeping your Cat's Eye, for example, and then using maybe a Chance Guards or something like that to get a little bit more MF. That's also an option if you wanted to keep some of the mobility, but still get something extra. But the Laying of Hands, in my opinion, is just really good. Even on top of already having demon damage on the Goldstrike Arch, I think it's just great to have. So this is what I would do. If I went the Goldstrike Arch, I would pick up the Atmas. And as well as the other setups, you still have the option for going both either Smoke and putting the additive damage charms in, or you can go the Duress and put the resistance charms, right? So either option, and yeah, it's just a great physical damage option. Notably, if you are upgrading it, you might as well socket it and put a Neph rune in it, because one of the downsides of both of these bows is they don't have knockback. Something to keep enemies away from you is quite handy at this point. So yeah, just something a little bit extra you can do to finish off your leveling progression. And in my mind, at this point, you're pretty much all the way there to where you can transition into a more expensive setup. The more expensive setups from here would probably require either a Wind Force or a Faith Bow. And at that point, you'd be level 80 plus anyway. So this is just a starter guide, so I'm not going to go there. But these are some great mid-level builds to get you progressing and basically farming Nightmare Baal to get the experience that you need to progress into hell, right? Once you finally get the items that are required for that. These builds here will do decent in Hell, but they won't be the best at it, I will say, right? So, anyway, that is the starter Bowazon. I hope you've enjoyed this overview of the Strafe Amazon, my focus, but like I mentioned at the beginning, you can also use Multishot for these configurations because you have so many free passive points that you can reallocate them as needed. Anyways, hope you've gleaned some tips and tricks, especially liked using the lightning bolts alternate, I will say. Having the Titans on off and just using the converted damage was like beautiful. Yeah, anyways, take care. Have a good day. Bye.